Welcome to Getting to the Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee from MTR Podcasts, and today's guest is Julia Fleischaker. Yeah? No?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Of Greedy Reads. Thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So
everyone wants to talk to me. It's really nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've been more social with having technology between me. It's like, hey, how's it going? But it's like online only. I'll talk to people online, but not in person.
That's really funny because, you know what, when I first opened the bookstore, I realized that it was my perfect social interaction because I refer to myself as like an oversharing introvert.
Wow.
So to have these like little contained moments with people and then you say goodbye and it's like done.
Mine's is usually a little worse. It's like, all right, I'm cutting your mic. Peace.
I should put some mics in. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's one of the other shows that I do before I even get into the interview piece. But one of the other shows that I do is a comedy podcast, and because I'm a ham, as it were. And one of the things we wanted to do was like a podcast contest, and like, almost like The Voice or something like that. And I wanted to call it Podmasters, and I just wanted to have all of the kind of like archetypes there, all the personalities, and then the way that someone is kicked off is like, yeah, I'm muting your mic, and that's the way that they're kicked off the show.
It's like the cane at the Apollo.
Yes.
Right up. Yeah.
It's a ridiculous idea. I was working with the Baltimore Improv Group, and I still feel like I can make it happen. I just want to put on a wig and wear like really glittery shirts and just play this whole character and see if it goes somewhere.
I think you should do it.
So let's get into Greedy Reads a little bit. So quickly, let us know what Greedy Reads is, and then I'm just going to hit you with the inundation of questions. But
sure. So Greedy Reads is a independent, very happily independent, locally owned bookstore. We sell new books. And we opened in 2018 in Fells Point in a very small 500 square foot, beautiful, dreamy space. I love it so much. And then we opened in November of last year, our second location. I always say that the only thing I couldn't do in the first location was the events that I wanted to. So we were lucky enough to kind of stumble on a bigger space in Remington, and that's beautiful and dreamy too. And it's my second baby. So
I've been to both of these locations regularly because I am dating an English major, and it's like, ooh, books. And I think the way that she described it, when the Remington location, she's like, yeah, it just smelled like books in there. And I was just high and I almost fell over. And I was like, all right, calm down.
The smell of books is so good. It's so good.
Oh my gosh.
I want to bottle it. I'm trying to bottle it. I don't know how though.
I mean, I'm looking for sponsors, so we can talk about this. So what is your background in publishing? Like, what is your background in the book world? But what is your background in publishing?
So I grew up in Maryland, and I graduated from the University of Maryland. And I guess probably a week after I graduated from College Park, I moved to New York, and I spent 20 years there. And that entire time, I really had never done anything except work in publishing. Mm-hmm. And so I spent, I lucked into a job pretty much. I really fell into it. I was working for a temp agency, and I got a temporary gig as the assistant to the president, the woman who was then the president of Penguin Books, and kind of parlayed that into a full-time gig as her assistant. And then, she was a tough boss, brilliant woman, tough boss, but she did me such a solid when we realized that our, I guess we could say our organizational systems, because I'm not the most organized person, they maybe weren't the best match, but she basically said, you've seen everybody come through my office in the last year and a half from every department. You've heard all of our meetings. What do you want to do? Tell me what you want to do. We'll find a place for you in the company. And so I was really fortunate, and I went into the publicity department at Penguin and stayed there for 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I started as an assistant and then just kind of toiled my way through. And when I left, I was the director of a department, and it was just an amazing experience. It was really cool. huge company, bigger now. I left right after, this is kind of inside baseball, but Penguin merged with Random House and created this kind of behemoth of publishing, and I left pretty soon after the merger. So after I did that, I kind of did the polar opposite in publishing, and I went and worked at a very small, literally 12 people in the office, independent publishing house based in Brooklyn called Melville House. Super literary, progressive, political, point of view, outspoken, they were really famous for the Twitter account when I was there. And it was really kind of like a photo negative that I got to do. And it was just so awesome that I got to stay in the same industry and have this totally different experience. And so I was there for 5 years, and I did publicity and marketing there. And, it's the difference between going and working for, doing a book tour with Mario Lopez at Penguin, and then going to work for on behalf of a translated book from an Egyptian dissident. So I kind of really got to run the gamut there. It was a great experience. Yeah.
That's a stark difference.
Yeah. Every once in a while I get Facebook memories pop up in my feed. And actually it was yesterday I was going in to sit in the studio for 8 hours with Geraldo. I was mentally preparing myself for that. So, that was about probably 13 years ago. So. Wow.
I mean, it's just, time is time right now as well. Yeah. When I don't have a good way of I'm kind of gobsmacked or whatever, just time is time.
Time is time. Time passes, but it also manages, things stay a lot the same.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
So tell me about some of the considerations that are needed. Some of the considerations you have to make when you're curating a bookstore or a bookshop.
Well, because I had that background in publishing, I'd been kind of immersed in the world. And so, what normal people would consider a book club conversation was me going out for drinks with friends. And so I didn't really know anything other than that. I had just had this kind of recall of every book that had been published in the last 20 years, just because that had been my life. But so what I really did when I opened up the Fells Point store is I started and I said, I'm going to build my dream home library. If I had a 500 square foot room in my house and I could fill it with books, what would I want? And it was awesome. It was really awesome. It was super fun. I am not from Baltimore, and I had not really lived in Baltimore before, and so I knew that there was going to be there were a couple things that I knew. I knew that I was going to have to get to know the city and the neighborhood and who was going to come and shop, but I also knew enough about Baltimore to know that it is a legendarily segregated, majority Black city, and I knew that I wanted my store to be a place where anyone in the city could come and find something that spoke to them. So that was another consideration. I feel very fortunate that my dream library seems to match up with what a lot of other people want. So I've never really had to face that kind of oh God, I hate these books. Do I have to carry them? I've really never had to face that. And I do pass on a lot of books. Obviously, in a store that says you have to. Right. You have to make those decisions. But it's worked out pretty well. It seems like a pretty kind of, we're vibing. Me in Baltimore. It's good.
I mean, I dig it. I've been to I've been to both locations, and they just have a certain energy there. And it felt welcoming. Sometimes you'll go to a place that you see the lines, you see the strings, you're like, all right, this is not the most welcoming place. And sometimes when I'll go to a bookstore and I'm like, all right, what's in here that I'm interested in? Because I have a wide variety of stuff, and especially the Remington location, I went there and I started like looking at it. I was like, oh, there's that Shea Serrano book that I like. There's this book. Oh, is that a bio on this person? I was like, okay, cool. All right. I can go in here with my girlfriend while she's in there just freebasing like the smell of books.
And you don't have to just like sit in the corner. You found some stuff that's great. And for you to say welcoming, that was really important to me. Partly because I knew I was going to be spending literally all of my time there. And I did. And I wanted it to be a place that people wanted to be. I mean, it shouldn't be a chore, right? I don't think reading should be a chore. I don't think looking for books or talking about books should be thought of as, like gross, homework, whatever. Like it's beautiful. And I wanted my stores to reflect that.
That's wonderful. You're doing a great job of that. Speaking of your business as a whole, more macroly, I guess, how has your business changed over the 2 years of this, or the 2+ years of its existence?
Well, we're barely open right now.
well, obviously.
So I'm going to say that it hasn't changed as much as you might think. And I've worked really hard to keep a personal feeling, this feeling of a neighborhood bookstore. I mean, because that's what it is. I mean, that's what we are. And we happen to have 2 of them now, but we are neighborhood bookstores. And, I think it's a little bit like they say about having children, like having your second child doesn't mean you have twice as much work. It's like an exponential kind of thing. Yeah. So, there's a lot more considerations, but if Greedy Reads stops being a place that feels welcoming to people, if it stops being a place where people feel like they can come in and have a leisurely browse and find things that interest them and find things that they wouldn't necessarily find other places, then what's the point? What's the point of our being there? And so it was really important for me when we did expand into Remington that I did everything that I could. And we have amazing booksellers, and my staff is just unbelievable at creating that feeling. And I don't know how I found, 7 unicorns in Baltimore, but I did. And I feel really fortunate about that.
That's great. I think somehow like Baltimore is, and let's talk about that a little bit. I think Baltimore has just something that makes it unique while also being familiar. It's like we have, like, Baltimore is very specific in how it goes about things. I think the term that I've been throwing around is gritty authenticity. What are your impressions of Baltimore? And secondarily, why did you choose to open up your stores in Baltimore?
I mean, I think that the answers to those 2 things are probably the same. I grew up outside of DC. So, in a suburb outside of DC. And then I, like I said, went to New York, and I was ready to leave New York. 20 years. I don't know if you've been in Baltimore. 20 years in New York it was good. It's good.
I think I'm dipped.
But to be frank, I was getting divorced. I was, I had been in my job for 5 years at that point, and it was a job that I loved, but I felt like I was coming to the end of just when, things have a natural end date, and I felt like I was coming to that. And, but I couldn't imagine what else I was going to do. I mean, how do you spend 20 years in one industry and then leave it and go, try to find someone to hire you to do anything else? Because you know one thing. You might know it really well, but there's not there are publishers outside of New York, but it's not a huge industry anywhere else.
Right.
But anyway, so my whole family is in DC now. And so I thought, well, I'll go to DC and see what I can do there, kind of make my way there. And I really didn't have a plan when I left New York. And it became really clear to me that my life in DC was not going to be that different than my life in New York, right? I was going to get a studio apartment. I was going to be dealing with the same kind of financial stressor, like all of those things were going to be the same. And I had actually applied for a job in Baltimore and had come up a number of times for interviews, and I didn't end up getting it, but it's fine. It worked out okay. And every time I would come up here, I would spend more and more time exploring. So I would, have an hour-long interview, and I would spend the whole day here. And I really just I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the energy. I mean, there's like this amazing creative energy in Baltimore in a way that I don't think I've ever seen anywhere else, frankly. I mean, but there's also, yes, it's authentic, but there's like this deep engagement with communities and this deep engagement with activism and this real kind of, I don't know, people in Baltimore feel present to me.
Yeah.
In a way that maybe they don't always in other places. Obviously, I haven't lived everywhere, but I just fell in love with it. I just found myself wanting to spend more and more time here, and thought to myself, well, let's see what's possible, if I decided to do this thing. Baltimore has great bookstores and had great bookstores, but I knew it had been a long time since a new one had opened. And because I was a publicist when I worked in publishing, so I would do author tours. So I was really familiar with the bookstores that were here, and I had great experience with Atomic and Red Emma's and the Ivy, and I had worked with all of them, and I knew that there was this great community of readers in the city that maybe you wouldn't know about if you hadn't done that. So anyway, I went out one day in Fells Point and I stumbled on my space, and I was like, this is crazy. This space is so beautiful. It's got the stained glass. It's got the iron gate. It's got these weathered floors. If I don't do this now, literally right now, someone else is going to snatch this up. And so it really felt like the decision was made for it. It was almost like, okay, well, I don't have a choice. I have to do it. Right. I haven't really thought it through, but I guess I got to do it. And so that decision was made for me. And, I signed the lease on the store before I had a place to live in Baltimore. And so everything happened very quickly after that.
It's great. It sounds like you took the leap, you found your thing, and it's like, it kind of goes into, I think a little bit, what you mentioned present, and I agree with that. And one of the things that when I read this Eastern way of thinking, and it's just sometimes when something hits you, whether it be an idea or whether it be just understanding something or whatever, when you get it, that's when you're supposed to get it, and then you have to act. You can choose on what you want to do, but it's like you're seeing it, you're feeling it right there specifically for that reason. It's and that's kind of how it is. There are things when you're chasing whatever it is that next thing that you want to do, with me in podcasting, which I look at it in a very artistic sort of way. It's not just I'm going to turn on some mics and I'm going to talk to people and try to be interesting. I try to get something out of the conversation, and I have a goal and so on. I actually am very serious about it. So, I look at some of the things that I have to do, whether it be being part of different groups and taking just different shots. And it's like, I got it right there. And it's like, this is not going to make sense right now. I'm just being full Aquarius about it. It's like, this isn't going to make sense for most people, but this is going to work right now. I guarantee it's going to work. And that's how I kind of go about that.
Yeah, I've had a few people ask to talk to me about entrepreneurial, people always want to hear from entrepreneur, and I don't consider myself an entrepreneur at all. And I'm definitely not a rise and grind person. That's not me, right?
Yeah.
and I envy those people. I wish I had that kind of get up and go. But it's not my personality. And, when I moved to New York, I always said, it wasn't a matter of loving New York. It just felt like home.
Sure.
And Baltimore felt that way to me as I was spending time here. And as a non kind of grind it out until you make it person, because I'm frankly lazy at my core. I was surprised at how much work it was, but I was also surprised at how much I loved the work. And I basically worked my ass off for 2 years I still am, but, to build it from nothing and to create something. But none of it was a hardship. It was every step of it has been a privilege. And I feel so fortunate to be here and to be here through this shutdown and to have people supporting us through this. And, as a semi-newcomer, I feel the welcome that I got from Baltimore and that has remained to this day has been amazing. And I'm eternally grateful to the city for what it's done for me. That's great. And that's one of the things that, we're charming here for one, but yeah. that's one of the, I mean by charm city. Okay. I got it.
So that's one of the things that I try to do with this podcast platform or what have you. Like, I've been podcasting, it'll be 12 years in February.
Wow.
And yes, I'm old. Some say I've been doing it way too long, but it's one of those things.
Nobody else can tell you that.
It's one of those things where I did my goofy, comedy podcast talking about weird news stories and all of this stuff for the majority of that time. And, as I touched on a little bit earlier before we got, started with the mics on, it was one of those things where I wanted to give something back and I wanted to help out the artist community and the business community, as much as I can in the city, because I think it makes up what the identity of this city is. Yeah. And it makes up what, like, I don't want to go down to like Fells Point or go into Remington and not see like the quirky businesses, your bookstores rather. And just like, I want to see those places prosper because they make up the DNA here.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I'm not a politician and nobody would ever elect me to office, but I think there's a lot that the city can do with that deep well of it is this beautiful combination of creativity and ambition and that exists so deeply here. And I think that it can be used to better advantage for the city. But again, I'm not a politician, but when I moved here, I was like, well, I want to have some Baltimore stuff. Yeah. I want Baltimore to be represented in my store. So when you're looking at the non-book items, what are the things you're going to round out the store with? And it was the easiest thing imaginable to stock my store with local makers because they're everywhere and they're talented. And it's like, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was like they were falling in my lap and it was like real quality product. It wasn't, okay, I'll take a look and let you know. I mean, it was like really, it was great art. It was candles. It was tea. It was all just and made here in Baltimore. And that was amazing to see just how deep that maker community goes here.
So since you said it, so I guess we can officially announce that we're doing the 2020 ticket, Fleischaker Lee 2020. We're taking over.
You want to hitch yourself to my wagon. I'm not sure about that.
I find myself in those conversations all the time, and I'm just like, this is what I would do. And,
yeah, I know.
And it just cuts right to the bone. And but yeah, and it's great. You're right. We do have a lot of makers here, and you have like shops like Made in Baltimore and so on, and a lot of the places out
in Remington, really close to my Remington shop. She has all Baltimore makers in there too. I mean, there's so many of them, and I always think about. She might kill me, but the first person that I reached out to stock in my store was Megan Lewis, who is an artist, and she goes by Urban Hipster on Instagram. And she sold these prints. They were 8x10 prints. They were great. I have one of her Billie Holiday prints hanging in the Fells Point store. And now 2 years later, she just had a mural at the U.S. Open.
Wow.
Yeah, she had something in Camden Yards, and it's just you really do get this kind of like hometown like I'm so proud of her. I'm so proud of her and so happy that talent is being recognized, and so happy that I kind of was able to sell her. She doesn't make the prints anymore, so I can't sell them anymore.
So I got a question about the name, actually.
Yeah.
So obviously, at least I would think, that we're not having lunch inside Greedy Reads. So how did you come up with the name Greedy Reads? And I immediately think of food, and maybe that's my own proclivity.
That's funny. That's funny. That's really interesting. Well, probably people think whatever they love most, right?
Well, I do love food.
Greedy about, but to me, I always say that it was a really aspirational name for me. So there have always been stores, and growing up outside of DC, I left Kramer Books and DuPont Circle when I was growing up, and of course Politics and Prose. And then moving to New York, I lived across the street from my ultimate bookstore called 3 Lives and Company, and I loved that store so much. And these stores are stores, especially 3 Lives and Company. You walk in, I would walk in, and I would want everything. I would just want to take it all home with me. And 3 Lives and Company is small and very heavily curated, and they do a lot of that kind of, they don't take everything, they don't stock everything, they really make choices, and they select what they're going to have in the store. And so that feeling of walking into a store and being like, oh my God, I want it all. That was a dream for me to be able to give somebody else that feeling. And so that was, to just like shove it all in your cart and go.
Give me that.
Yeah, exactly. You pay before you go, but yeah.
Well, I would hope. I mean, we have a barter system here.
Yeah.
So we have a few more, and then I'm gonna give you, because you mentioned something before these mics went on, and we got to talk about. But I'm gonna give you these last few questions. We'll give you these last few questions. Can you share maybe 2 to 3 books that you've recently read that you would recommend?
Yeah, for sure. I can recommend more than that, because I can recommend 4 to 5 books by Baltimore authors that I recommend that are pretty new.
Okay, I see you combine 2 questions.
Okay, well, I'll start with the recommend. So the first one, I wrote down three books here that I did want to recommend. The first one is by a Baltimore author. It's called True Story by Kate Reed Petty. She does live here. She's local. It is, I literally could not put it down. And I don't know about you, but like my pandemic attention span has been a little bit shot, but like I could not put this book down. It is a story of a high school student and an assault that may or may not have happened, and it has multiple narrators, and she tells it in multiple kind of forms. So like one chapter is told entirely through draft college application essays, and you kind of learn this person's story through these drafts that she writes. I'm so proud of Kate. She did such a good job. I highly recommend it. I kind of put it down and was like, whew, I got to think about this for a while. I got to sit with this and like not talk to anybody about it for a couple of days and got to like absorb it all. So that was really good. I would recommend Luster by, oh my God, Raven Leilani is her name. It is kind of at its most basic level, a struggling millennial story, kind of like a millennial who has a job that barely pays the bills and is really dissatisfied in life. But there's this real kind of rawness and gutting look into this woman's life. And I don't know if you or anyone who's listening read Queenie. It's kind of like a more raw version of Queenie. And I love Queenie, so I like them both. And then the third one I would recommend just came out in September. So Transcendent Kingdom by Ya Jesse, who is the author of Homegoing, which I know a lot of us have read. I know we did it in the Greedy Reads book club. That book was one of those phenomenons that you're like, how does somebody follow this up? How do you not just like go somewhere and never talk to anyone again after you write something like this? But apparently she's a real person who lives a life and probably like takes the subway and, But so her new book, Transcendent Kingdom, is the story of Ghanaian immigrants living in Alabama. Mm-hmm. And it touches on faith versus science. It touches on drug addiction and depression. And she writes in her language is not flowery. It's not super fancy. It's pretty plain. Mm-hmm. But every sentence is like a gut punch. I mean, she just, it's a, yes. Again, I finished the book and I was like, wow. Wow. It's sad. But I was also sad to have finished it because I liked the character.
Let's put that on the jacket, actually. For it. All right. I think that's everything. Oh! I almost forgot about the hot seat questions, and then I'll give you an opportunity to shameless pluggity plug all of your stuff. So let's see. Favorite Baltimore location, like neighborhood, landmark. What is your favorite like place in Baltimore?
Oh my God, this is totally hot seat for me because I always say that I moved to Baltimore, put my bags down in my place, and then like never went anywhere except for my store, which is not true. Totally. I probably love a lot of the same places. I Clavel Larder near Remington. I love those here over by the Fells Point store. I love Charmed Kitchen, which is something that the neighborhood desperately needed, which is a little bistro kind of place. I love to walk around Mount Vernon. It reminds me of New York in its density and the architecture. Peabody Library. I mean, how can you not feel awed when you walk into that space? And I spend a lot of time in Patterson Park because I have a dog and she demands sniffing time. So we spend a lot of time in Patterson Park and I love it there.
Okay. You're so far you're filling in because all those places I'm friends with Chris, who's behind Lauder, and sophomore, Patterson Park regularly. I live not too far from there. So
go.
Same page.
Okay. All right. Well, I need someone to tell me more places, but
okay. I mean, I'm the tastemaker here. I can give you some suggestions or what have you.
You can tell me like your list, your top 10 or something.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is a new question I have, but since I have you on here, I might as well ask you. You'll be my guinea pig on this question, I suppose. Favorite place to read?
My bed.
Okay. So no, okay, because some people will say I'm going to go to the park and read. Yours just
actually, well, okay. My favorite place to read is alone at a quiet bar.
That's a unique one. I've never heard that one before.
My all-time favorite place. You pull up a stool, you have your book, you eat some French fries, you have a couple of glasses of wine. That to me is like an ultimate evening. I love it. I have not done that since.
Well.
I have no sense of time anymore. March, May? When did this start? I don't remember, but I haven't done it in a long time, but that is my all-time favorite reading location. Doesn't really matter. There just can't be TVs. That's the most important thing.
Okay.
No TVs in the bar.
This is an anti-TV place. I dig it.
Yeah.
Now, the last two, one is controversial because we already talked about it, but I am going to ask it again.
Yeah.
And this one is a staple question for Baltimoreans. So people who live here, you've been here. You've passed many of the challenges. You've exceeded. So I'll ask you this one, and then the other one I already know the answer to, but I'm still going to ask it. Best place to get a crab cake?
Fadley's.
Okay. You okay? Okay. Because most of the people have said Fadley's. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I like the whole vibe of it. The standing, I like bars, I guess. I like standing at the bar and eating my crab cake.
Now here's the last one. Favorite snowball flavor?
You had to do it.
Of course I did.
All right. Well, as you know, I've never had a snowball.
Oh, this is a 75% right here.
I'm ashamed. I'm embarrassed. I expect to be driven out of Baltimore in a hail of shaved ice at any moment. But Ice Queens. I want to go visit Ice Queens. They're in Locust Point, I think.
Yeah.
Then they just opened up. And I follow them on Instagram, and they look amazing.
Well, one of the things we do here, for people who have not had snowballs, you know how you've heard of like being tarred and feathered? We tar and crab cake, we tar and crab shell people. That's what we do. It's just, it's a dead man or whatever. So when I previously asked you that, you said a little bit about New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
So say more about that, because I don't think we actually talked about that at all.
I kind of bounced around a lot in college. It took me a couple extra years to graduate because I went to 3 colleges. But I did go to Tulane, so I went to New Orleans right after high school and feel this insanely deep and abiding love for the city. I love it so much. And I actually feel like Baltimore and New Orleans are very similar in a lot of ways. And that might have been part of what drew me to Baltimore. I really date myself. I really age myself here. After I left New Orleans, it was a pretty hard time in my life, and I probably left earlier than I should have. I never felt done with the city. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I left before I was really done with it. And so I never wanted to go back because I thought it would be too painful. And so I just went back. I mean, it was pre-Katrina that I was there. It was before I moved to New York. So we're talking 27, 28 years ago that I was there.
Oh, wow.
And I just went back for the first time last year and just kicked myself for having stayed away for so long. It's very different.
Yes.
Structurally, it's very different. Aesthetically, it's kind of different, but I'm also not an 18-year-old, looking for a hand grenade on Bourbon Street. So it was a very different, but that soul of it, I think.
Well,
I think it is very different post-Katrina, clearly, but I just love it. And I really do feel a lot of that same heart and soul in Baltimore. And I kind of think of them as sister cities, honestly.
You've said everything right. You know what? The snowball question, you actually get a...
Was I forgiven?
you get a pass for that one. New Orleans is my favorite city outside of Baltimore. And I agree with that notion that they're very similar. And even talking with the folks down there, I've gone maybe 3 or 4 times. I usually go for my birthday. Yeah. And talking to the folks down there, they sound like people that are from here. I mean, outside of the accent, but what they're talking about and how they talk about things, it feels like I'm in West Baltimore right now, or I know this person. Like, man, I remember you. And to put it in context before we wrap up for some shameless plug stuff, the last time I was down there, I was there for my birthday, and it was the day that the Saints lost to the Rams. So this is 2 years ago.
Okay.
And I had to go out right after that loss for birthday dinner. And it was just so depressing. And I was like, this is how it feels when the Ravens lose in the playoffs. This is the same
people crying in the streets.
Just sad saxophones. It was crying your bread pudding in your creme brulee.
Yeah. I mean, you can certainly drown your sorrows there.
Yes. Just the plan was to try to go this year for Mardi Gras because it's like, all right, I could still do irresponsible things. I'm not quite at a certain stage, but I don't know. But I just, that's the place where I get a fair amount of energy from. And I have this concept and belief that certain cities, certain locations are portals to like the weird. And New Orleans is definitely a portal. And it has changed considerably, even, the last few years outside of like almost 15, 20, almost 20 since like Katrina, what have you. And it's a lot of differences there. And, I still think the heartbeat and what the city is still there, but it has changed considerably.
Yeah, for sure. But after I went back for the first time in 20 years, I went back again 3 months later. and then all of this happened. So I can't wait to go back. I'm really excited to go back.
It's like that Hannibal Buress joke. I want based off of something Hannibal Buress said about, New Orleans. All I would do is throw myself, parade, second lines, and gamble. And I was just like, I would do the same thing.
Oh my God. I eat oysters and drink Bloody Marys. That's,
You get it. So,
what else do you do when you're there?
Right. So, shameless plug time. What do you want to plug? Your website, your Instagram, anything that you got coming up, or what have you?
I mean, I would say go visit greedyreads.com. This is a weird time right now, and things are changing. But right now, we're doing shopping by appointment. So the stores are open to come browse again. We got a whole lot of stuff up and running since we shut down, but we now ship nationwide. We do tons of virtual book clubs, and we're adding more all the time. So we've done some amazing books in our book club. So I would highly recommend go. We have a sci-fi book club. We have a romance book club. We have a general book club. We do a long read book club. In the beginning of the shutdown, we did weekly meetings, and we read and we finished Moby Dick, and it was amazing. So you can find everything. And then we have a fully functioning shopping website where you can do curbside pickup if you don't want to come in. You can come in and pick it up if you do. You can find everything at greedyreads.com. It's all right there. And I would just want to say thank you for having me. And thank you to everyone in Baltimore for sticking with us. I mean, we had to learn. I'm still learning how to run a bookstore in normal times. And so this has been like a real learning curve. But I'm just so grateful that everybody has stuck with us and shown such support.
That's great. I am going to do my sign off, and then that'll be that. So, I'm Rob Lee for my friend. I'll say that my friend Julia from Greedy Reads, saying there's art in and around Baltimore. All you have to do is look for it.